After fighting light winds, lightning storms, and then finally experiencing some awesome trade wind sailing, we are now into the final week of our Indian Ocean passage. Our goal of reaching the tropical Seychelles Islands is just over 1,000 miles away, but the weather is not going to make this easy, and we are pushing on fast to try and outrun a patch of bad weather which is chasing us across the Indian Ocean. It's middle of the night and we've got 30 to 40 knots of wind. We've had to drop the staysail and we've put up the storm jib, and we've got a triple reef mainsail and the storm jib, and to be honest right now I'm wishing we didn't have the triple reef mainsail, we're just on the storm jib.
On top of that, we have to make a decision about our routing between rough seas and rough winds as we approach the shallow Seychelles bank. We are Matt and Amy. We've been living aboard and sailing around the world for 5 years now on our 37-foot sailboat, Florence. We have already crossed 2 oceans together and are now on our toughest challenge yet, crossing the Indian Ocean. It's been 2 weeks since we last saw land or another person. 2,000 miles have passed under our keel since we left Indonesia, and we are surrounded by nothing except the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean. Our daily lives are governed by the weather and the sea state, and these are both about to get worse.
Well, the weather changes every day and the forecast changes every day, and we've got a little bit more of an interesting weather situation now. Today we're back into solid trade winds and we're absolutely flying along, and there's another reason we're absolutely flying along, and that is because coming up behind us there is a rotating tropical system, which is not something we want to tangle with. A bit too much wind for our liking, and so the current plan is for us to outrun that. Des, our weather router in South Africa, is keeping an eye on it for us, and it looks like we should be able to outrun it to the west, and it's going to go to the north, but who knows where these systems really go. They're difficult to forecast, so we need to be keeping an eye on it, and we should have been able to keep clear of it at our previous speed, but prudence says that a little bit of a bigger distance between us and that system would be better. So today we put a little bit more sail area up than we would have done normally in this sort of wind, and Florence is absolutely trucking along at over 7 knots, so just put a little bit more distance between us and that system. Oh yeah, and we just reached a momentous point in the voyage where the distance to go is suddenly reading an actual number, because it can only read 3 digits, so it's been saying 999 most of the way along. Now it says 994, 994 miles to go to the Seychelles. Less than 1,000 miles to go. Half an Atlantic crossing, a mere half Atlantic crossing. Probably takes about a week. Well, I actually spotted that ship on the horizon. It's got a white superstructure, and I was looking ahead. I thought, that's a massive wave, and then I looked a bit more carefully, and it was actually a ship structure about 5-6 miles away.
After over a week without seeing anything except the sea and sky, we appear to be crossing some shipping lanes. The big waves surrounding us make spotting the ships more difficult.
Laughed at me when I didn't see a ship. Look at you sat there eating your Pringles. Wait, Phyllis comes up on a wave. It's quite big. Surprising the number of ships on this route. I think a lot of them must be going from South Africa to Singapore.
That just says, instead of sitting on my backside and looking out like this, that's not good enough. What I need to do is stand up on the side deck and have a real look at the horizon, because even now I can't see that ship. There's a wave in between us and that ship. I can't see it. Now I can see it. These waves are pretty big, and our sails get in the way of seeing stuff as well. Yeah, I bet he didn't see us.
Fish on! Is it still there?
Yeah.
What do you reckon it is?
Mahi.
Despite being chased by a storm, life goes on as normal on Florence, just a bit faster.
them on before we can fillet them in this weather, because otherwise they slide off the back deck. I always feel really bad about killing anything. I mean, we are doing this to eat it. I think if we weren't eating it, I'd feel very differently about it. But it's tasty, fresh mahi-mahi.
It's a decent sized fish.
It is a decent sized fish. We don't need any bigger than that.
That's perfect for us, I think.
I think smaller would be perfect.
As delicious as fresh fish is, it takes a lot of effort and energy to prepare one on a rolling boat.
Yeah, I think we've got like at least 3 days of all you can eat fish. At least 3 days. We had some for lunch and I'm just cooking some for dinner. We've got some pumpkin roasting in the oven and we're going to make some couscous. Before we set off I mixed up some couscous with like spices and stuff, so it's just, you just add water, so that should make life a bit easier because it's a bit difficult to stand up.
Oh, that looks and smells good.
Everything smells and tastes better when you're at sea, so you can't really go wrong.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Now that is a tasty dinner.
Sunset dinner this evening, which means it's a bit later than I intended.
The wind and sea stay eased as we headed into the night with a beautiful sunset. What came next was not so beautiful.
You won't be able to see anything on camera, but it's middle of the night and we've got 30 to 40 knots of wind. We've had to drop the staysail and we put up the storm jib, and we've got a triple reef mainsail and the storm jib, and to be honest right now I'm wishing we didn't have the triple reef mainsail, we were just on the storm jib. But it's just like squall clouds coming through and you can't really tell what they're going to do because you can't see because it's pitch black, but you just feel some rain come on the front edge of them and then wallop, you get hit by the wind. Yeah, it's absolutely howling. We're surfing down these big waves, they're breaking around us. It's more challenging sailing than it has been in the last few days.
It was a pretty wild night last night with gusts up to 40 knots, and I think it's going to be breezy for most of the day, but we've got a really beautiful full rainbow beside us at the moment. And this wind means we are making some fantastic progress. Although getting the staysail down and switching over to the storm jib in the night wasn't as difficult as we thought it might be, it was difficult to pack the staysail up neatly. So it's currently at my feet in the cockpit, and when Matt gets up a bit later we'll try and pack that up properly and put it back on the deck.
The morning after the night before. Now we've got to clear up the mess. It was a pretty crazy night. 40 knots, 35 knots sustained and gusts of 40, and the staysail was just too big for us. With that much wind we'd have gone too fast, and then if we go too fast we surf down the waves, and although that's really fast and fun in daylight, it's not the safest thing to do because you can hit the wave in front and screw round and then get knocked over a little bit. Of course then the wind eased off, but anyway, so now we're just going to tidy everything up and get the boat ship shape again, ready for whatever hits us next. wave behind us. The camera flattens them, they look a lot bigger in real life. We've had a lot more disturbed conditions, a lot more wind than we were expecting in this area for the last 24 hours. And we just had an email from our weather router, Des, who looks at the bigger picture for us. He's suggesting that we head slightly more west rather than our sort of west-northwesterly course that we're doing at the moment directly towards the Seychelles. And if we do that, head slightly more west, we should get away from this area of instability into more steady trade winds, where we should get such big squalls. That was a big wave. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. When we look at the grid files, it makes perfect sense from a weather point of view. But we then compared that overlaying against the chart, and there's a lot of shoal areas, like shallow areas, where the depth of the water goes from 2,000 or 3,000 meters up to 150 or even less in a really short space of distance, and that can kick up a really rough sea state. Not as though it's not rough already, but a really, really rough, steep, short sea state, which can be really uncomfortable, and those waves can often do more damage than the wind, because if it's too windy we can take the sails down, but you can't do much about the sea state. So I think we're going to jibe to go slightly more westerly now, as he's suggesting, but we really want to then come back onto a northwesterly heading way before he's suggesting, so that we come up and then approach the Seychelles from the west, which means we'll only have to go across that shoal area for about 65 miles instead of having to go across it for a couple of days if we come in from the other angle. Lots of things to consider. I think the first thing to do is to jibe and get a little bit more westerly and try and get into some more stable conditions and away from these squalls. So it's pretty windy. We've got 27 knots of wind and some pretty big seas, and we're going to jibe the boat. Now, we've got a triple reef mainsail, which is good because that makes jibing the main a lot easier because it's a lot smaller, but we still need to be, the best thing for us to do is to be moving fast whilst we jibe that mainsail across. So we've got 3 sails up at the moment. We've got a triple reef mainsail, we've got a double reef genoa on the pole, and we've got the storm jib. So the storm jib we don't really need, that's kind of left there from last night. So first of all we're going to drop that and tie it down on the bow. Then second, we're going to actually then jibe the boat, jibe the mainsail across, and we're going to do that before we take the genoa in, because the genoa will keep giving us that power to keep us moving fast, so that means there'll be much less pressure on the mainsail when we jibe it over.
Yep.
Get the preventer off. Okay, you're going to bring the traveller into the middle.
Yep.
Okay, traveller's centralised. I'm going to wind the main in. Ready when you are.
Okay, on this wave. Okay, driving now. Now.
Nice and easy with 3 reefs in the main. Let the traveller down.
Big wave.
Now I'm going to go and move that preventer across.
Yeah, great. What I'm doing now is trying to make sure that we are sailing downwind, but that we don't accidentally jibe and I don't take my out or damage the boat.
And then once we've got the mainsail jibed over and the preventer back on and we're all stable, we'll furl the genoa away, take the pole down from the starboard side, put the pole back up on the port side, and unfurl the genoa on that side.
That's the pole up on the other side, but we're doing like 5.5 knots, so we can do with a little bit of genoa out just to get our speed back up.
Bang on course, 280, nice. Good stuff, nice and smooth.
Uh-huh.
Clear drama. I just had a nice bucket wash, thrown a couple of buckets of salt water over myself, but I have to say, after what I found on the deck this morning, I looked very closely at the contents of each bucket before I threw it over myself. That is, I think, a blue bottle jellyfish, and I think that can give quite an uncomfortable sting. So I'm really glad that we haven't brought one of those up and chucked it over ourselves when we've been having a bucket wash. I think I'm going to poke that over the side with something, not my fingers. We're also very lucky that we didn't stand on that jellyfish in the dark, because we go around everywhere on Florence 100% of the time barefoot. The few things that you'd normally kick and stub your toe on, because we've been living on board since 2016, we know where those things are, and we very rarely stub our toes these days, so barefoot is the way forward, but it wouldn't be nice to step on that jellyfish. We could probably do with a little bit more sail area, and we've currently still got the storm jib lashed down on the bow on top of the dinghy, and I think we need to swap that for the staysail, so we've got a little bit more sail area we can use, because I don't think, fingers crossed, it's not going to be storm jib conditions. Hopefully we should have these sort of conditions for the rest of the way into the Seychelles.
Our storm jib and staysail are both hang-on sails instead of being on a furler that we can control from the cockpit like the genoa, so we have to come up onto the bow to swap them over. It would be much easier to use the staysail if it was on a furler, but furlers are expensive, and it would also be difficult to swap to the storm jib when it gets too windy for the staysail. What we're doing now is the reverse of what we did in the pitch black of night when the wind picked up to 40 knots. It's much easier in these calm conditions.
This is the first ocean passage for which we've had a staysail, so we're still learning how it performs on different wind angles and different wind strengths, and when the right point is to swap from genoa to staysail and staysail to storm jib.
Yeah, you ready?
It's a trial and error process of learning what works best for Florence. Despite the need to come up onto the bow to hoist and drop this hang-on sail, we are finding that the benefits of having it outweigh the extra work outside of the cockpit. The real test for this staysail will be the upcoming passage from Seychelles to South Africa, where we expect a lot more wind and to be sailing upwind or reaching.
Just downloaded the latest weather via the sat phone and a message from Des, our weather router in South Africa, and it looks like that system that was coming up behind us is going to stay behind us. We're getting well ahead of it now, so it's not too much of a worry.
With the chasing storm now well behind us and the wind speed dropping, it's time to shake out a reef in the mainsail to keep Florence's speed up. We can't do that whilst heading downwind because the pressure of the wind stops us from raising or lowering the mainsail. So we have to fill the genoa, sheet in the staysail, and turn up onto a close hold course. Then the pressure of the wind is taken out of the mainsail, and we can put in or take out its reefs.
Reef out.
Once that's done, we steer back onto course and unfurl the genoa once more. This takes us about 5 minutes by the time we've got ready beforehand and tidied all the ropes up again afterwards. What do you reckon it is?
I don't know, I think it's smaller.
The fishing is certainly good in this part of the ocean. We don't have to wait long after putting the line out to get a bite these days.
I think it might be another bonito or skipjack tuna.
Well, that's the first. I think this is a skipjack tuna. Early morning catch, so this will be good for lunch and dinner. Good timing. It opened its mouth and threw up like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little part digested fish. That's never happened before. That's a bit weird. I think we must have sailed through a shoal of these little things, and I think the skipjack, or whatever they are, we think it's skipjack, must have been feeding because we got a bite, which was actually a pretty big one, and I could see it was kind of bluey coloured, and I started to reel it in and it... Oh! Got close enough to know what it damn well was. And it jumped off the hook. And then almost immediately we got another bite straight away, which is this smaller one. So I don't think it'll be the same fish stupid enough to bite the same hook twice. But yeah, lunch and dinner sorted. Just looking ahead to our route to the Seychelles, and we've now sailed off the charts. So different chart packages. That one was the Indian Ocean. This one is down the coast of Africa. So put that in, we should get a little bit more information. And now we've got all the detailed information around the Seychelles. So we can plan our route in, because there's quite a lot of shallow areas on the route in. We're going to come up the outside of this shallow bank, stay in the really deep water until the last minute, and then we've got about 60 or 70 miles to go in from the east into the Seychelles. So I'm just going to plan that route in now. So that'll take us the next probably 4 days. We've got just under 450 miles to go. Getting pretty excited to arrive in the Seychelles now. The weather's improved, we've come out of the unstable air, pretty light. So we're not going especially fast, just doing 4.8 knots, but it's consistent, nice sun, a few little puffy clouds, just beautiful sailing conditions.
Next time, we sight land for the first time in over 3 weeks, but we have one final challenge. We want to cross the shallow Seychelles bank and arrive in daylight so that we can anchor safely. That means we have to sail Florence fast in a race against the setting sun. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and click the bell to get a notification when the next video is released. And let us know what you think of the video. We love reading all your comments.
We would like to thank everyone who supports us, and especially our star patrons.